Welcome friends to another r/NuclearRevenge video. Today we've got a story of someone making their own mom pay thousands of dollars. That said, our first story of the day is hitting my ex where it really hurts. The tale of scandalous partners is one that is old as time, and I'm glad there's a way to share it. I'm a 22-year-old female, and my ex is 23 years old. I just graduated the university in the summer, so this incident is pretty fresh. I was a really late bloomer. I couldn't properly sit until 7 months old, started walking at 2 years, and speaking at 3 years old, after my parents paid for a ton of speech therapy and a lot of other treatments to get me on my feet. To make matters worse, I had no underlying health conditions, so my parents just didn't know what to expect. I got my first period at 15, and my chest started coming in when I was almost done with high school. And it was almost out of nowhere. I went from barely having anything to having C cups. From being in the background, I suddenly started to get a lot of attention for ending junior year flat and starting the senior year with bigger boobs than most of my classmates. I had no idea how to handle all the attention, and I let it get to my head, getting with every Tom, Richard, and Harry that expressed interest in me, and literally having a new boyfriend every 2 weeks. I can't even begin to tell you the rumors that came as a consequence of my actions, but that's a story for another day. I calmed down a bit in uni, mainly because I moved to London and hardly knew anyone there during my first year. In my second year though, I had figured out the right places to go to meet the right people. One of the people I met was a player for the England women's soccer team. I won't name any names for obvious reasons. I had no idea in the beginning because I know nothing about sports. We met in a club and I held her hair back when she threw up and took care of her through the night. After then, we hit it off. She was great, and I even got to meet her teammates and attend a few games with my other friends because she always gave me free tickets to her games, even if they weren't taking place in the UK. After all my high school shenanigans, I didn't get into another relationship until my third year in uni. I met a really hot Italian dude, I'll call him Mario, at one of the many house parties I attended. A lot of the people think that we hit it off immediately, but I actually didn't like him. He was one of those jerks that knew they were hot and they used it to be jerks. I didn't like him, but somehow he started showing up to a lot of things because I noticed him more. We didn't start speaking properly until 3 months after we met because a mutual friend lost her parent and we were at the funeral. My own car broke down and I had to hitch a ride with him back to campus. We played carpool karaoke and found that we both enjoyed similar kinds of music. For almost the entire ride, we were both singing the lyrics to every song that came up on the radio. It might seem lame, but music is one of the biggest parts of me, and having someone who didn't playfully mock my taste in music was one huge way to get to my heart. After the drive back to campus, the both of us exchanged contacts and began texting all the time. And I mean all the time. Our friends still thought that we hated each other, so we had to hide the fact that we were talking. It was innocent in the beginning, or so I thought, until he invited me out to the park one night, and we had a cliche romantic moment where he kissed me under the stars and let me know that he liked me. The very next day, something changed about him. He didn't want to hide us anymore. He held my hand when we were out to lunch with our friends and diverted all the questions he knew I'd be uncomfortable with away from me. It was a full 180 from who he used to be with me just a few days ago, but it felt nice to be in that position for once. Mario, much like the video game character, was the kind of person who went after what he wanted and he would do anything. I just didn't know what anything really entailed till later in the relationship. Keep in mind that we weren't really official yet, but we held hands, went on dates, kissed, hooked up, and did virtually all the coupley activities that couples did. Naturally, I assumed that we were dating and talked about it to my friends. A couple weeks into the relationship, Mario stood me up on a date we were supposed to have. I called him, mad and yelling, and he just told me that there was no need to be so angry. After all, he wasn't my boyfriend. It came as a shock to me when he said it, but I was more embarrassed when I heard his friends cackling in the background. I was heartbroken, but I'm not one to dwell on sad emotions, and I decided it was a perfect opportunity to go on a weeknight with my girlfriends. We dressed up in super short dresses, did our hair and makeup, and went out club hopping. I was lucky enough to make good connections in uni, so among my friends were cousins, siblings, and even girlfriends of different celebrities and public figures. This meant I was invited to every event that was held. For the entire week, I spent my time partying and going out just so I wouldn't think about how Mario had hurt me. I was also posting on my Instagram, half hoping that he would see the videos and at least apologize. On Friday of the same week, the week that Mario embarrassed me, my friends and I bar hopped for a few hours until my footballer friend invited me to a high-end hotel where her teammate was hosting a party at. I went there with my girlfriends as usual, and we had a good time. The next day, I was woken up by Mario blasting my phone with calls and texts, worrying me. When I answered, he started to apologize for how he treated me, claiming that he was so drunk that night and didn't realize what he was saying. I could have asked questions, but he just had a way with words that swept me off my feet. And before I knew it, I had forgiven him and agreed to a date with him. We went out to eat and he got me flowers, was a gentleman the entire day, and ended the night by giving me a pretty necklace and asking me to officially be his girlfriend. I feel like as a psychology student, I should have the good sense to question his intent and sudden change of heart, but I was too overcome by the idea of romance that I let it slide. I said yes to Mario, and we began dating. Usually he didn't care that I went out with my girlfriends a lot, but then he started asking me to go with us. My friends didn't like it much because our nights out were usually an all-girls thing, but I convinced them that it was harmless and we could do with the extra protection from creeps. I didn't notice it at first, but he started trying to get the attention of whatever big name would be in the club or bar or party. He would ask them to follow him on Instagram and even bug them throughout the time that they were in the club or at the event. He didn't stop until a friend of mine told him about it. Then my friends became the bad people. I was trying to maintain my relationship with my friends and with my boyfriend. Then I stretched myself thin trying to do what both groups wanted. Even though Mario was obviously trying to leech off me and my friends' connections, and was going about it in the worst way, I still made a lot of excuses for him because I believed that he was just being misunderstood. Our first major fight concerning this situation was when the England's women's football team had a friendly game, and they won the game. We went out to celebrate at one of the really exclusive clubs and Mario asked to go with me. It was an all-girl thing, so I obviously refused, and he was livid. He accused me of always hogging contacts and never wanting him to be pals with my famous friends. I was called a selfish witch, among many other very colorful things, before I eventually left for the party. My relationship with Mario was strained after that fight, and I tried to have a conversation with him about how I felt about him tagging along during my outings with my friends. Of course, he called me some more colorful names and went ahead to guilt trip me by letting me know that he'd always wanted to be a football player and that meeting my friend, who was also a football player, would do great things for him. It surprised me because I'd been with him for nearly 10 months and not once before had he mentioned playing football or any sports besides going to the gym. I felt bad anyway and apologized, promising to do something before the semester was over. Unfortunately, I was unable to, and we all parted ways for the holidays. I went back to America to see my family and spent the whole time there. During the time I was there, Mario and I didn't talk much because of the time difference, and he also said that he was catching up on football training. I never asked for photos, but now that I think about it, I should have. I patiently waited for the holiday to be over and over, then traveled back to London almost a week earlier than I said I would. I wanted to surprise my boyfriend with my presents. It was a Wednesday afternoon when I decided to go and see Mario, and from the door to his room, I could hear the sounds of hooking up. I was convinced that it was adult entertainment and used the spare key I had to go in. Boy, was I so wrong. My boyfriend of almost an entire year was in bed with another girl. I slammed the door really hard on my way out, which alerted him and made him run after me. We had a huge fight in the middle of his apartment complex, where I broke up with him and blocked him right there. He showed up at my house and apologized, swearing that it was the first and only time, somehow blaming the entire thing on the girl that I caught him with. Like I said earlier, he had a way with words, and in 2 weeks, we were together again. This time, Mario didn't really bother hiding his infidelity as much. He flirted with girls openly, texted them with huge smiles, and spoke to his mother, or sisters, very frequently. We didn't see a lot during the finals when we both had our final exams before we would graduate from university. Even then, he continued to cheat on me. I didn't say anything to him because I wanted to be the one to break up with him in a way that would hurt his ego and pride. At the end of our final exams and a month till graduation, the UFEA's Women's Euro football game started. And as usual, my friend informed me and sent me tickets. I dispersed them all among my friends and me, making sure there weren't any extras. I, however, lied to Mario that we both got tickets and amazing seats. He was really excited and bragged about it to his friends, telling them how he controlled me and could do whatever he wanted and I wouldn't complain. His friends are snitches and terrible people, just like him. The day of the game arrived, and we got to the stadium where the game was happening. My friends and I showed our tickets, and just before we went in, I turned around and let Mario know that there was never any ticket for him. I told him that I knew that he'd been cheating on me the entire time, and then broke up with him on that spot before going in to watch the game. He made a ruckus and yelled until he was carted away from the venue by security. It was an excellent game, and England won. I erased Mario from my memories and never saw him after then. It was like he disappeared into thin air, but I was satisfied with my decision. It's what he deserved for breaking my heart, as well as the hearts of the many other girls he cheated on me with. Honestly, this might be really satisfying for OP, but does anybody else wish there was more revenge here? Am I wrong that a guy like this who's so blatantly going around cheating all the time deserves worse than missing out on going to something they're really excited to? Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. And by the way, if you're enjoying these stories, make sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons down below as well so you never miss any of my daily videos. And our final story of the day is I made my mom pay $25,000 for her mistakes. Chaotic doesn't even begin to cover how crazy the story gets. And it's just funny how this was the type of life I saw as normal just a few months ago. When my friends in high school talked about having strict parents, I thought they were brats who didn't understand how the real world works. To me, they didn't appreciate the fact that their parents were saving them from mistakes that they wouldn't be able to undo and would be forced to live with, which is basically what my mom told me every other day. I was her mistake that she couldn't undo, and she was forced to live with the outcome of her rash decision to fall in love with a senior who enrolled in the army the day after they hooked up for the first time. Back when I was younger, I thought my mom walked on angel's clouds. I used to think that my dad was the devil for promising my mom the world and abandoning her when she was pregnant and alone. Turns out it was just one of the many lies she told me, and told herself, to convince herself that someone else was to blame for how she ended up. In reality, the person who she often called my dad was not my dad at all. He was a married soldier who was posted to the army base in our town, and she had a crush on him, wishing that she was pregnant with his child, and not the child of a random hookup she had one night. But that's only part of the truth about my life that I found out much later. For over 19 years, my mom was the center of the world, and I didn't even realize that she put herself in that position until I started seeing beyond the image she presented to me. When I was 6, I wanted to make a decision for myself for the very first time. I didn't want to wear pigtails to school because the boys in my class would pull on them, so I told my mom, and she said it was a bad idea to want something other than what she tells me to have because I could end up making a mistake and have to live with it. After all, what if one of the boys pulling on my pigtails was supposed to be the love of my life? My 6-year-old brain didn't understand the whole bit about the love of my life, but I definitely picked up on the word mistake. And soon, it would be the only justifiable reason for my mother's actions. She was the one who decided what I ate, the types of notebooks I got, and down to the gowns I wore to prom, and the friends I went with. I didn't take a step without my mom's knowledge, and the first time I tried to rebel, it ended so badly I ran back to the cocoon of her overbearing protectiveness. I was 12 and I thought it was odd that my friends were hanging out at the mall, and I was stuck helping my mom clean the house after one of her party nights with friends that drank and smoked more than their brain cells could hold. So one weekend, my best friend Stacy told me that we should meet up at the library to work on an assignment, and I told my mom. It was schoolwork and a friend she knew, so she wasn't too reluctant to let me go. But I had just 1 hour, and she literally started a timer as I stepped out of the house. I got to the library in 10 minutes, and Stacy was waiting in front of the library with 2 of our other friends from school. As soon as I got there and said hello, Stacy turned towards the direction of the mall, and I protested because I was so sure my mom would come looking for me if she somehow sensed that I wasn't at the library. But Stacy assured me that it was all right. I wanted to be able to relate to their giggles when recounting weekend visits to the mall, so it didn't take a lot to convince me. But as we were taking the escalator at the mall, I tripped over my shoelaces and ended up breaking one of my teeth. The mall security called my mom to pick me up from the hospital they rushed me to because of the blood pooling out of my mouth. And when she got there, she was the perfect picture of a worried mother. But as soon as we got back home, she railed into me about going against her orders and how I was going to end up making mistakes like she did. It was the first time she told me the story about the soldier who abandoned her at 16, pregnant with his child, cast out by her family, and all alone in this cold, hard, wicked world. And I cried like a fool that night. I thought he didn't want me, and she was stuck living with a reminder of someone who hurt her badly. So I became even more compliant than before, and she became more overbearing. She told me to cut ties with all the friends I had. I did. But Stacy wouldn't stop talking to me, and years later, I'm grateful for it. My mom didn't know that Stacy and I were still friends, and it was one of the first things I kept from her. Because I told my mom every single thing. Even when boys started trying to date me, I would run home and give her the full downplay. She insisted on meeting every single one of them before I even considered the prospect. And she would always come up with reasons for why it was always a no. No to movies, no to hanging out at a park, and a hard no to going to the mall. I went against her demands for the second time when I was a sophomore in high school. It started with a boy. I know that's super corny, but it's true. I started getting to know this boy who had always been in my class right from preschool. And when I realized that I didn't want to stop talking to him, I made him a girl and told her all about this super serious, boring girl who was based on the exact opposite of who he was. Let's call him Brian. Stacy was the only one who knew that I had feelings for Brian, and we barely even spoke outside of science. But I liked him and he liked me, and my mom could disappear for all I cared. In case you're wondering, she didn't. You know how people say love makes you do stupid things? Well, Brian was my first love, and I felt like I could do anything to protect what we had. He was the only boy who didn't go through my mom's cross-examination, and that meant he was the first boy I went on a date with. We went to the movies and he bought a pizza for us to share after the movie ended. I felt bad because I had no money, but Brian told me it was okay since we were both eating, and he would have felt bad if I wasn't eating at all. Brian loved my appetite, but he didn't understand that my meals were far and in between when my mom was hosting guests. And that year, she had her friends over almost every day. Brian was such a son for all the dark days I was piling up from my mom's emotional abuse. But good things don't last, and my mom found out about him about a week to our first year anniversary. He was my biggest accomplishment, the biggest secret I'd kept from her, and he made me so happy. And that was the mistake I made. I let her see my happiness, and one day she followed me to my summer job at a restaurant in the mall and waited till my shift was over. Brian came to pick me up, and as soon as she saw him, she crossed over from the other side of the mall and launched at me. She kept screaming, "You sloth, you sloth," and kept pulling at my hair while slapping me. I don't want to say she had never hit me before, but it was just knocks here, a few hard shoves there. This was on another level, and I couldn't shout for help. I just kept crying. Brian was quick on his feet, and he got a security officer to help him get my mom away. She slapped Brian. The security officer had to put her in handcuffs, but the damage was done. Everyone on that floor was staring at me and Brian as the security officer dragged my mom, literally, to the detention center. Brian tried to console me, but I just kept crying and apologizing for her. He was convinced that I shouldn't return home that day, but I knew it would only get worse. When I got home, she was crying and apologizing. He was going to ruin me and she wanted to save me. That was what she said, but I knew it wasn't that simple. And that's when I started getting wary of her and listening closer to her drunk ramblings. A few weeks after that whole drama, she was passed out with some of her friends, and she kept going on and on about the soldier who didn't love her back, with one of the dope heads egging her on about being a sloth with one too many baby daddies. And that's how I was able to piece together that my father was never a soldier, she wasn't even sure who he was. It was the last sense of pride I had. No matter how much I hated the man who abandoned us, I was always a bit comforted by the fact that he was fighting for the country. My life was the punchline of a bad joke. That's when I started saving more and working harder. I needed to be free of her, and with college drawing closer, I needed to find a way to get out of her life with as little drama as possible. I've always had an interest in art, and when the new art teacher in my senior year of high school noticed my talent, she suggested that I try applying myself more to it and consider a career as a graphic artist or illustrator. I was so excited because it felt like someone was offering me a different identity, but my mom thought it was foolish. Do you think I'd be able to afford to feed you 3 times a day if I'd followed every hobby I wanted to? That was her argument. And the growing snide part of me wanted to answer, but you don't actually pay for anything. It's the drug heads that hang around you for who knows why that actually fund your lifestyle. But I didn't say that because I had a plan, and I needed to be compliant for it to work. Anyway, the art teacher told me about a scholarship for a college that was about 2,000 miles away from us. It had a special merit section for art students. She had a former colleague on the board for selection, and she was sure I could get in. She officially became my student advisor, and she helped me meet the projects, academic, and extracurricular quota I needed to get the scholarship. But when the mail came, it was a rejection, and we were both confused. I was certainly a shoo-in, even without the letter of recommendation from my art teacher and her former colleague. But while she tried to investigate the rejection, Brian and Stacy were convinced that my mom had done something sinister. I hadn't told her about it, so I wasn't as sure as they were, but it was still a worthy suspicion. Then one day, a week after the rejection came in, I was cleaning up the house while my mom slept off her hangover, and I noticed some papers shoved under the rug. All the partying from the night before must have shifted them from the center of the rug to the edges. As soon as I saw the letterhead of the college, I knew it was the original acceptance letter, and my guess was right. Immediately, I went to Stacy's place, and I called my art teacher. As soon as she picked up, she told me she was just about to call. Her friend had reviewed the list, and I was definitely accepted, and the mail had been sent out 2 days before I saw the rejection mail waiting conveniently on my desk at home. I told her I'd seen the acceptance letter my mom had tried to hide, and she told me I had to figure out how to deal with it on my own. Stacy was all for calling the cops and having her arrested for some type of fraud or contempt or anything, but Brian thought it would be better to strike her when it's hot. So I came up with a plan. I went back home that night and I told my mom that I saw the letter. As expected, she cried and told me it was a mistake and she just got scared and didn't want me to leave. I told her it was okay and there was nothing to worry about. I wasn't going to leave her, not without taking an equivalent of what she stole from me. For a week after that, I carefully looked through all the documents in the house and gathered her car papers, bank statements, and everything that had even the smallest value. My mom may have been the worst type of mother, but before she got caught up in drugs and alcohol, she made one smart decision. She got a good mortgage deal on our tiny house. And that was the nail I needed on the coffin. Still playing the part of the dutiful daughter, I helped her to her room one night after her guests had left, and while she was puking her guts out, I told her I'd found out about an insurance deal that was applicable to us and it would be a great way to protect her in our house, while I plan on going to community college. She was so drunk and so delighted in my thoughtfulness, and she signed the papers I pulled out of thin air with none of the usual caution she applied to anything relating to my life. It was an odd chance, luck you may call it, but I was embracing it. When she was done, unknowingly signing for a $25,000 loan charged back on the mortgage, I tucked her in, hugged her, and told her it was the beginning of a new phase for us. It's been 7 months since then. I've moved out of the house the day before the first repayment deposit was taken out of her account, and I got emancipated a month before that. My mom ended up paying $25,000 for the biggest mistake she ever made. Not the fact that she gave birth to me, but she underestimated how much of her evil pettiness she passed on. honestly, I'm just surprised that, considering how evil and how petty this mom was, that they didn't have any kind of like further legal actions or something, a private investigator or whatever, to come and investigate this whole $25,000 loan. Don't you usually have to be like in person to sign for those kinds of things anyways? It's kind of impressive that OP could like get a piece of paper, have their mom sign it while they were totally out of their mind, and somehow get them on the hook for it. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another revenge story that was way crazier than any of the ones in this video, click on that left video. Or if you missed my latest video, check out the one on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.